Just before I call a member, I'm just sort of seeking a little bit of advice, because I have in front of me the decision of the Business Committee of the 4th of November 2014, which says that for the first, second and third readings of government bills where the New Zealand National Party gives one of its 10-minute calls to a government support party, the 5-minute call for the government support parties will be given to the New Zealand National Party. I'm just seeking whether in fact there is authority for that decision to be overruled from the chair. And excuse me, just for a second.
On 21.2, Mr. Speaker, between two members of different parties, both parties agree.
That's not an individual speaking time being shared between
two members. You've got the split live call between the Green Party and
yeah, but that's not. I think what I will do is I will call Marama Fox, but I will ask the clerk to look at the rules, because it appears that the Business Committee decision might prohibit it, but I think in the interests of goodwill and nearly Christmas, I'll call Marama Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and a very wise decision indeed. Given that I think the first speaker, who was indeed a member of the support party, was also the sponsoring minister of the bill. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to turn my comments to our support from our advisors. Those advisors from TPK on behalf of the Crown, who gave incredible support to the Māori Affairs Select Committee during the deliberations of this bill, and in fact throughout the hearings as we went around the country. They provided us with very sound advice through some complex deliberation. We came to a point, clause by clause, where everyone in the Select Committee supported the recommendations. And let me say that one more time. Everyone in Select Committee supported every recommendation throughout the deliberation process, having been debated thoroughly throughout this process. And so to John Clark and Taria for their commitment to the Māori Affairs Select Committee, I want to commend them and their efforts. Mr. Speaker, I also want to highlight a couple of things that this bill does that have not been done before. One is the recognition of whāngai, given it equal status to the adoption of formal adoption through law. This ensures that, as is Māori custom in whāngai, and we debated this back and forward to ensure that we understood it, that custom has now been observed in this bill. In fact, a number of tikanga elements are being observed throughout this legislation that does give greater rangatiratanga to landowners. And while we've heard that many landowners do not understand or did not support this bill, there were also a number of landowners who in fact did support this bill. And you're right, it has been somewhat contentious. But here is the thing. Much has been said about the importance of having widespread approval. And so with that in mind, I actually approached the opposition members of the House to see if they would put aside political allegiances and come together to work on this bill to ensure that we could have the best piece of legislation possible for our people, for Māori people, Māori landowners. And it is true that less than 5% or about 5% of Māori land is still of the land of the whole of Aotearoa is still in ownership of Māori. And therefore we need to be careful that we do ensure retention, that the land is not at threat. And we actually had some submitters who came and said, you know what, the thresholds are too high. We can't even sell the land if we want to sell the land, or we can't even get widespread approval of the 75% threshold to make the changes that we want to make. And so the protections are so great that some people objected to this bill because the retention of the land was so great. That point needs to be made. But here is what was said to me when we put out the hand to work across the House in a pan-party agreement to ensure we had the best bill possible. What was said to me by opposition members of the House was, but Marama, that's the game. That's the game we play. And we'll object to it and we'll stand up and we'll say those things because, you know, at the end of the day, that's why we're in opposition. Well, if that is the attitude, I find it quite surprising that we will ever get to there. Oh, yes, I can tell you exactly who says that, but I don't want to embarrass them in this place. So, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you also that at the very beginning of this term of Parliament, Ture Flavel invited every member of the Labour Opposition Party to come and have dinner with him on 2 occasions, and therefore laid out the work plan, including the Ture Whenua, and invited them to ask him questions, to participate, to come and work together if they had any concerns. That was never taken up. Not once did anybody walk through that door and take up the minister's open invitation to work collaboratively on this bill. But when we come to deliberations in the Māori Affairs Select Committee, and I do, with the others, commend Nuk Korako for the way in which he constructively worked on this, every single recommendation, every deliberation was agreed to by every member. There is no record in our proceedings of the objections in a clause by clause. Overall, there was disagreement and minority report, but I commend this bill to the House.